to start a brand new series with you guys this week called Fam. And it's all about the idea of family in not just the family that you would think of when we say family, but when you look at the greater picture of Christ followers, you and I are all part of one big family through our faith. But that doesn't separate us necessarily from our individual families as well, whatever that may look like. And so this whole series, and kind of to start it out and just to get a little bit of a framework from where we're coming from, I want to ask you guys a series of questions. So if this question applies to you, I want you to stand up. Okay? So if the answer is yes to these questions, I want you to stand up. So, does your family have inside jokes? If this is true, stand up. Okay? Okay? Do you use nicknames in your family? Stand up if this is true for you. Sit down if those nicknames are not mean. Oh, okay. No, I'm just kidding. All right, go ahead and sit down. Do you fight with your family? Oh, yeah. Everybody's standing up. Yep, myself included. Do you have any siblings? Everybody in here. Wow, okay, awesome. No single, no like only children, not single, no only children. Okay. All right. Do you share clothes or shoes with your family? Yeah, that would be weird, Jeff. All right. Oh, yeah. Do you share a room with someone in your family? Not anymore. That's always a fun time. All right. Do you have someone who always gets to control the TV in your house? Stay standing if you are that person. If there's somebody in your family that controls the TV, and stay standing if you are that person. There's two members of the same family standing here. So, okay, so then the answer is yes, and the stay standing if you're the person that controls the TV would be no. Okay, gotcha. Does your family eat meals together? Okay. And do you have fun with your family? No. Okay. Thank you guys for participating. The purpose of that is just simply just to make the point that all of our families can really look different from each other. There's things about our families that are similar, things about our families that are different, but each one of us is on our own family that has its own quirks, its own funny things, its own weird names that we have for each other, our own things. Our families can look really different from each other. Case in point, when I was growing up, this is a picture of me with my family. That's actually my siblings. I'm the oldest of four. So my sister is 13 years younger than me. My brother there is 3 years younger than me. And my other brother is 5 years younger than me. And this was on a family vacation in Branson, Missouri. And you can see July 2008. I would have been going into my sophomore year of high school then. So that was fun. And the next picture is like my whole family. So that would have been later that winter, and you can see my mom and dad there. So that's the family I come from. It was a family where we always had to fight over the TV, fight over who got the last bag of whatever, fight over everything, and fight over who was the better Star Wars Battlefront player, which was me. So that was what my family looked like growing up, and nowadays my family looks a little bit different. I've got a family of my own, and you guys, a lot of you know Chelsea, and there's Zeke and Ezra. Yeah, Ezra's a little bit bigger now because that was taken a while ago. That was taken in the spring, and we've actually changed houses since then. So that's kind of sad too because that's not our house anymore. But that's my family now, and as time goes on, our families change, our dynamics change, the way that we regard one another changes because we get more mature or we get more possessive, either one. We change and we grow as the dynamics of our family changes and grows. And I know that each and every one of you may have a little bit of a different family background. Maybe you live with both parents. Maybe you have just mom in the home or just dad in the home. Or maybe you have step parents or step siblings. All of this looks different depending on your situation. Maybe you live with a foster family, or maybe you've been adopted. And so the family that you're with now is not blood related, but they are your family. And so all of us, we come from different families. And some of us, it just looks different. And when we use familial analogies, it resonates differently with each and every one of us because of different things. Maybe the biological family you live with, when I say family, is the biological family. Maybe when I say family, it's the biological parents you've never met. Maybe when I say family, you think of extended family members. How many of you think of that? When I say family, you think of your extended family as well with that. When I say family, maybe you think of people who aren't related to you, but who have become your family. Anybody think of those people? Maybe it's the family that you are your chosen family, like your group of friends or your small group or whatever it is. You have things that you think of when you think of the word family. And all of us, it looks a little bit different. But what's interesting is the older you get and the more that dynamics change, the more that your family dynamic changes, the more that maybe you recognize different tensions that are in the house. Maybe you were younger and you just fought over things and didn't really think about it other than it was those things, like you fought over the controller or something. But maybe as you got older, it became less about the controller and more about that person is so selfish and it always has to be about them, right? Then it becomes about the other person rather than what they're actually doing that bothers you. And those dynamics change a little. Maybe you have family members that drive you crazy, that drive you insane. Don't look at them if they're in the room with you right now. Maybe you have family members that you just get along with great. Maybe there's family members that embarrass you. Maybe there's family members that you aspire to be like. We all have different things that we think of and dynamics that we think of. And there's, the older we get, the more complicated our schedules get. If you're involved in extracurriculars, you got more going on and more. Sometimes you guys are getting pulled in different directions, and that just there's things that make life more complicated. You think about the question that, like, does your family eat together? Maybe you used to, but now you have so crazy schedules you don't really get the chance to eat together as often as you used to. Maybe you have an older sibling that went off to college. Maybe the household looks different now because people are grown. But another thing that can make family life really complicated is faith. Faith can create tension in your family. And there's a number of ways that this can happen. So either faith creates tension because your faith is really important to you, but it's not important to other people in your family. Maybe you're the only Christian in your family, and so you wrestle with how to honor your parents, but at the same time honor God, and you feel that tension. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe you aren't interested in faith at all, and maybe your parents actually dragged you here, and so the only reason you're here is because your parents have faith and they want you to have faith. And maybe church is a punishment for you because you did something bad, and so now you got to come to church every week. And maybe it's just not something you're interested in, but your family is, and so you're trying to manage those tensions. Or maybe you're not really sure how faith and family mix. Maybe it's kind of separated. Like church is where you talk about faith, family is where you talk about schedules, and how you play games together, you do other things. But how do those things come together? How do you have meaningful conversations that you don't feel awkward talking to your parents about as it relates to your faith? How do you ask critical questions if maybe you're wrestling with doubts, but you don't feel like you can bring those to your family because you don't want to be judged or your family to think that you don't, that you aren't interested in God or anything. You just have questions, and maybe you don't know how that relates to your family life. How do we make sure that our faith is actually going to make our family life better? I think that's the ultimate question that I want to kind of pose to you as we start the series, but also the question that we kind of answer as we continue throughout the series over the next several weeks. How do we make sure that our faith is actually helping to make our families better? This is a critical question. It's something that I think we all, if we haven't been aware of that question, it's something that we instinctively strive towards. We want our faith and our families to be in sync, and we also want our faith to inform all of our relationships, including our family. How do we, and it's tough when you live with somebody because then, it doesn't matter if you like them or not, you're stuck with them. And you've got to learn to love people despite the things you may or may not like about people in general. And family is a great first opportunity to learn those kind of life skills and those faith skills. So how do we make sure that our faith actually makes our family lives better? How do we make sure it's not just a big judgmental ground? How do we make sure that it's not something where we just fight over? How do we make sure it is something that makes our families better? And so Jesus was talking with his disciples one night, and to kind of set the scene for you, this is right before Jesus was going to be handed over to be crucified. And so he's having what's known as the Last Supper with his disciples, and the Apostle John, who is writing this, was very close to Jesus during his ministry, and at the end of his life, he goes back and he starts writing down specific moments from Jesus' ministry that John himself witnessed. And as they're eating this last meal together, the disciples don't know that this is going to be their last meal together, but Jesus does. And so Jesus is kind of preparing them for things, and this is what he says to them during that time. This is John chapter 13, verse 35. He says, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you" what? "Love one another." By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. In other words, what he's saying is that people will know that we follow him and believe in him by the way that we love each other. Now, if we're being really honest and we take a close look at our lives, how many of us would not want people to look at the way we relate to our families as evidence of our faith or lack thereof? Because if we're really honest, and myself included growing up, we're not always the nicest to our own family. So sometimes we don't want to be judged. We don't want our faith to be judged by the way that we treat our family. But Jesus is saying, people will know that you are my disciples and that you believe in me by the way you love one another. And kind of like I said earlier, family is the very first test to put that into practice. Loving your family is how your faith can make an impact. And so maybe instead of being upset at something that somebody else is doing in your family, or getting frustrated and thinking the worst of them, like they are selfish, they don't think of anybody else, they think the universe revolves around them. Instead of thinking those things, you think, how can I show love to them despite what they're doing or despite how I'm feeling at this moment? It's a conflict. It's a conflict with our feelings and our faith, which oftentimes, despite popular belief, our feelings don't always go in line with our faith. Sometimes our faith requires us to step beyond what our feelings are in the moment in order to act on something we believe in the bigger picture. But loving your family is how you can make an impact, make your family life better by the way you love one another. And this is super easy, but it's super tough to live out. It's super tough to try to live this way and to be able to be there for your family and to be able to love your family and have patience with your family when sometimes that's just not what we want to do. And in fact, a little more than a decade after Jesus had that conversation with his disciples, there was another apostle named Paul, which we read from all the time. He wrote a lot of the New Testament, and when he first interacted with Jesus, it changed his life forever. And he goes on to be one of the most prominent leaders in the early church. And he goes and visits a bunch of church, writes letters to them, follows up with them, and tries to minister to them to help them grow and navigate their faith. And here's what he says to the church in Corinth. He's talking about love, and how do you know if you are being loving? Well, this is how he describes it. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. That's a tough one. It does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Meaning that no matter what's going on in the moment, you can choose love despite anything else that you're feeling. You could choose love to make the situation better. You can choose love to maybe, even if the other person won't change, you can choose love to at least change your interaction in that moment, your interaction, your relationship with that family member. If you think, basically it's putting others before yourself. If you can do that in your family, then let me tell you this. Girls, you want to look for a guy someday that can treat his family well, because that's an indicator of how he's going to treat and lead your family later in life. It's going to be an indication of the patience that he's going to have with you on tough days. And guys, if you want a girl that's going to be a great wife to you someday, you're going to want somebody who is good to their friends, who treats everybody with kindness, who shows love in all these other ways. And that'll be a good metric for how they're going to love you and your family someday. So how do we put this to work? What does it look like to love your family? And what does it look like to choose any of those things? Because as you read that passage in Corinthians, it's just easy to say, well, I'm not good at that, I'm not good at that, I'm not good at this. But I want to encourage you, start just by picking one of those things. You'll have a chance to look at that verse here in a little bit again, but I want you to look at that passage and start by just picking one thing that you can apply to your life. If it's me, then it's patience every time. That's the first one that I struggle with more than anything else, is patience. So how can I exhibit patience in my relationships? How can I exhibit patience just anywhere else? Whether I'm at school, whether I'm on my way to class, and how do I show patience? What about the person that is getting on my nerves? How do I show patience? We just start by picking one of those qualities and work on those this week. And remember that loving your family is how your faith can make an impact, because it's so easy to forget and so easy to separate and compartmentalize and think my faith is over here, my family's over here. And it's hard to make them kind of come together and to remember that actually your faith exists even in your family. It's not just how you act when you're at school, although that's part of it. It's not just how you come to church, although that's part of it. It's how you treat even those closest to you. So as you guys get ready to go to your small groups, what's one way that you can show love to your family this week? I want you to think about that question. I'll pray for you guys, and you'll be dismissed to your small groups.